Friends, as you might be aware, today happens to be the birthday of William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare was born 458 years ago in Stratford, which is a small town a few kilometers away from London, and seated on the bank of River Avon. Shakespeare was born on the 23rd of April. But the 23rd of April is not only the birthday of William Shakespeare, it is also the day on which William Shakespeare died at the age of 52. Shakespeare died on the 23rd of April in 1616 during the reign of James I. When our secretary, Mr. Abdullah Khan, asked me if I could speak a few words by way of commemoration on this occasion, I readily agreed, and I offered to speak on Shakespeare the man, a topic on which many people are not well informed. Mr. Khan approved of the suggestion, and accordingly, I am standing before you to tell you just a few things about Shakespeare the man, with special reference to the prominent traits, characteristics of his nature. How do you gather information about the character of an author who died a few centuries ago? There are three ways you can read the author's books and analyze the frequency of references to various ideas, images, and concerns. To mention just one example about Shakespeare, you will be surprised to see the innumerable references in Shakespeare's works to music. In almost all the plays, in almost all the 37 plays, you find innumerable references to music. He makes Cleopatra say, "Music, moody food of us that trade in love." Shakespeare's 12th Night begins with a passage which is dominated by music. "If music be the food of love, give me excess of it, that surfeiting the appetite may sicken and so die." Another source based on which you can make conclusions about the character of an author is those references and comments made by the contemporaries of the author. To take an example relating to Shakespeare, in the year 1592, a publisher called Chettle published a pamphlet. Actually, he published the pamphlet to make amends for having published a book which contained derogatory references to Shakespeare. In this pamphlet, Chettle says that Shakespeare was a man of civil behavior, polite behavior. He was an excellent actor. He was a man of uprightness, that is honesty. And he possessed the ability to write gracefully. We gather a lot about Shakespeare from this single sentence by Chettle. The third method is to examine the references to the author's incidents in the author's life. Take, for example, one instance relating to Shakespeare. The court register in a particular locality in London shows that Shakespeare was summoned by the court to appear before it as a witness. We get the details. Shakespeare made a statement before the judge in favor of a young couple. And this shows that Shakespeare took a kindly interest in young people. I was speaking to you about the various methods by which we can gather information about a person's, an author's life and character, particularly when the author happens to be a person who died centuries ago. We can make quite a few statements confidently about Shakespeare. One statement which I should like to make about Shakespeare is that Shakespeare was a shrewd businessman in addition to being an excellent writer. He was businesslike. He wanted to make money. And Shakespeare was hardworking to the core. There is a famous Elizabethan playwright called Webster. In one of his writings, Webster says or speaks about Shakespeare's copious industry. Copious means plentiful. Industry is hardworking nature. When a person happens to be shrewd and hardworking at the same time, that person will definitely become rich. That was what happened in Shakespeare's case also. In the year 1692, Shakespeare had absolutely nothing. He had just finished his apprenticeship. But in the year 1692, he started making money by writing plays and also by acting in various plays. We have records showing that in the year 1697, Shakespeare purchased the second largest house in his own native town, and that is Stratford. That house is known as the New Place. Shakespeare wanted to show to the people there, that was his own place, that he had become a success story. In 1599, Shakespeare and a few friends of his built a very impressive theatre complex called the Globe Theatre. It's very expensive to build a theatre complex, and Shakespeare you should note, was the principal, the most important shareholder. This shows that he knew, in addition to writing plays, how to invest his money. In 1602. In 1602, Shakespeare bought, we are told, 107 acres of land in Stratford. A few months later, he bought another house in Stratford and 25 cents of land near that house. In 1613, Shakespeare bought a house in London. He did not want to stay there. It was an instance of shrewd investment. And we gather from records that Shakespeare paid £140 for that house. When people become rich, they want to rise in the society also. In those days, that is during Shakespeare's lifetime, to be considered a noble family, your family should have a coat of arms. A coat of arms means a shield with some motto written on it. Shakespeare made an application for a coat of arms in the name of his father, John. I think he was awarded the coat of arms. Now, I have been elaborating on the theme that he was hardworking and that his hardworking nature took him higher and higher in the society. Shakespeare in all has written 37 plays, 6 long poems, and 154 sonnets. It should be remembered that on an average, Shakespeare wrote 2 plays a year. What does it show? You cannot show another English playwright who was so hardworking as Shakespeare. Another statement which I should like to make about Shakespeare is that he was a likable character, a person, the kind of person whom people liked. He had with him a large group of friends. He was, some of his contemporaries have testified to this nature of Shakespeare, a likable man who possessed an open nature. There was a friend of Shakespeare called Ben Jonson. When Shakespeare's works were published in the folio form in the year 1623, Ben Jonson wrote a poem about it, and that poem was included in the edition. In that poem, Ben Jonson refers to Shakespeare as my gentle Shakespeare, the sweet swan of Avon. Avon is a river. Although on several occasions Ben Jonson criticized Shakespeare On this occasion, he has very sweet words about Shakespeare. They were friends. In the year 1641, in a magazine called Timber, Ben Jonson made a comment. I loved him and honored his memory on this side of idolatry. Idolatry means the worship of statues, idols. That is, I loved him to the extent of not being idolatrous. He was a gentleman and he possessed an open nature. This is one of the closest friends of Shakespeare speaking about Shakespeare. Yet another thing you should remember about Shakespeare is that some people don't consider it a good quality. He was convivial. The word convivial means taking delight in drinking in the company of other people. Shakespeare, I told you, had a large number of friends. Very often, I do not know the frequency of their meeting, they would meet in taverns. A tavern is very much like our toddy shop. And they would discuss things and drink. And Shakespeare entertained all these friends by his wit and interesting comments. There is a tradition that Shakespeare's death at the age of 52 was caused by an illness which he contracted on the occasion of one such drinking party. Shakespeare was drinking in the company of Ben Jonson, Michael Drayton, and others. Possibly because of exposure to the cold weather, he caught a fever. Of that fever, he died. People accepted this story. This could be a story with no correspondence to reality. People accepted this story because Reverend Ward, who was the vicar in Stratford, wrote in his diary that this is something that really happened. Because of, in Shakespeare's lifetime, the general impression towards Shakespeare was that he was not a very serious kind of man. They thought of him as a person who was interested in merrymaking. But quite a lot of authors belonging to Shakespeare's own period, Fuller, for example, Fuller in the book The Worthies of England, says that side by side with his inclination to festivity, Shakespeare possessed a kind of discipline which prevented him from exceeding or moving to excesses. There are quite a few more characteristics of Shakespeare which I should like to discuss. But as the time is rather short, I will just to refer to these things which I can't elaborate on this occasion. I would have spoken to you to you at length about Shakespeare's education. Shakespeare, compared to authors like Marlowe, Greene and others, was not an educated man, university wit. Shakespeare stopped his education at the high school level. And there is an interesting comment about Shakespeare's education, and this comment was made by Ben Jonson. The comment is that Shakespeare had little Latin and small Greek. I will speak about the remaining topics relating to Shakespeare on another occasion. I am concluding, and I should like to thank you for having been listening to me. Okay.